Welcome to Become the Leader, the show that equips you to rise higher, lead stronger, and become the leader you would follow. Hey guys, welcome back to the Become the Leader podcast, the place where you can grow and develop your skills in order to lead other people in such a way that they would actually want to follow you. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the leaders that we have looked up to, interacted with, or at times not even enjoyed at all. And we're going to talk about some of the style that goes along with that, looking at both the values of the person as well as the actions and the way that they presented themselves. So as we get started, I'm Jody Holland.
I'm Mike Grigsby.
Megan Slaughter.
And we are missing Malia today. She had a last minute schedule change. As you know, her full-time job that we don't pay her for is to be the executive director of a nonprofit. So I guess where she gets paid needed her more than where she is not currently getting paid. So I was just thinking about, when I went into business, I quit 3 jobs in a row because of bad leaders. Now, I ended up being in business because straight out of school, went to work for the state of Texas, had one really good boss that my direct supervisor reported to, and one really not good boss that I reported directly to. And it seemed like every time I tried to do something to advance the work that we were doing or to make it better, I got in trouble. And I don't know if you guys have had that experience. It's like no matter what you do, if they didn't think of it, then it's not okay. And some people call that a micromanager. Some people call that a jerk. I just called it frustrating at the time. And a couple of months in, I started telling my wife, I'm not going to make it. There's no way I'm going to make it working for this person. And I made it about 7 or 8 months and then found another job. Think about, let's start with bad. What's a bad leadership characteristic that you have dealt with, Mike?
It's kind of along the same lines of what you were just saying, but it's kind of that fear. I was going to say it's jealousy, but the leader that feels like you're going to take his position, and so I think we can call that an insecure leader. Those are not only bad to work for; they're dangerous. They're dangerous for your organization. They're dangerous for the team. I had a leader one time. I had been in the military for 8 years, and I got out and found a civilian job. And in the military, it's all about training up and learning. And I told this individual that I planned to be at the organization for a long time, and I wanted him to tell me what do I need to do to eventually rise to a position level of where you are. He put his hands down on the desk, stood forward, and it's like, you want me to tell you how to take my job? I was like, that's not what I said. And now I no longer want to be at this company long term.
Yeah, that took about 30 seconds.
Yeah, and that's a very insecure leader.
Very much so. So we don't like the insecurity. We don't like the demeaning and condescending stuff. That was for me. How about you, Megan? What's a bad leader experience?
I think one of the biggest things for me is when the leader wants to take all of the credit for the good, but place the blame on their people for any of the bad. Because you either share in all of it or you're responsible. And most of the time, they don't want anything to do with the things that go wrong. But the second things go right, they say, oh, that's because I'm the leader and I did this. And then another trait that I personally cannot stand is when leaders will confront employees in front of the entire team or in front
Mm.
of customers. Because I think that should be a private conversation because you have to build that level of respect and trust between employee and leader.
So for you,
Sure.
it's kind of the disrespectful leader. When you look at this, I think that really all 3 of those fall into the transactional category. So you think about 2 ends of a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, you have the transactional leader. Everything is kind of like scientific management, Taylorism from the 1800s, where you have the carrot and the stick. I will punish you if you don't do what I say. I will only reward you if you do what I say. And I find all transactional leaders that I've dealt with, may not be all across the world, but all that I've dealt with are pretty insecure and tend to be pretty disrespectful because it's just about creating compliance and forcing people into what they're supposed to do. The other end of that spectrum would be the transformational leader. And you can see throughout history, there have been a lot of transformational leaders where they may not always be the quote unquote nicest to get along with, but they were the ones that inspired great change. And I would
Right.
imagine, based on going back through history, our 16th president of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, he was very transformational, and he was a visionary. So he understood the importance of respect and valuing all of humanity, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that didn't like him, because with transformation comes pain. Anytime you're creating change, you're going to create
So
some
true.
kind of pain. So think about the characteristics of somebody that you have seen that is transformational. A lot of times they're challenging. A lot of times they've got great vision behind them. They drive really hard to get what they want out of life. Who have you seen, or what kinds of things have you seen with those kinds of leaders?
Yeah. What's funny is you're talking about transformational, and I would have to say it's been my experience that those transformational leaders transform without you even realizing that that's what they're doing. Um, it's their style, it's their approach. They are very secure in who they are, but two, they speak to you in a way that is presuming you are also secure in who you are, and they call you up into something bigger than. I think one of the stories that just absolutely jumps out at me is the story of when Hewlett Packard was a young company, and there was a mid-level manager that made a $13 million mistake, and he got called into Mr. Packard's or Mr. Hewitt's office, and he walked in with with his resignation in hand, and he just knew that he was going to be fired, and he slid the resignation across the table. And Mr. Hewitt or Mr. Packard said something to the effect of like, fire you. He's like, hell, son, we just spent $13 million training you. We need to understand what you're going to do, how what you learned from this, and how you're going to change the company. And the question is, do you think that that mid-level manager did more for the company after that, or less for the company after that? And that's kind of what that transformational leadership looked like. But they weren't trying to be transformational.
Yeah. How about you, Meg?
I think that's a great example. And with transformational leadership, I think those kind of people recognize that leadership is a two-way street. And so they're very collaborative. They talk to their people. They don't just give them the answers to things, but they draw that out of them. And they're inspiring. So they are helping their people get to where they need to be, but their people are also helping them, because you can't be a leader without followers. And, as a follower, you need a leader to guide you. So it's a two-way street, and you have to work in collaboration with one
That's really good,
another.
Megan. That's really good.
I think you've looked at this book. I don't know if you've read it yet or not, but Mike and I read a book when we were first in business together back in 2000. It was The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. And one of the very first things that it says, I think it's actually in the foreword, is if you think you're a leader and turn around and see that you have no followers, you're just out taking a walk. And I've always kind of thought about that. I'm like, yeah, if you don't have anybody that wants to follow you, then you're not leading. You can't transform anything if you don't have that. So you think about this correlation of values to actions. And I talk about this a lot with companies, that you say you have these values. Like, I've never seen a company that said, oh, we have an absolute utter lack of integrity as one of our core values. Like, they always put integrity or honesty or some aspect of that,
Right. Right.
saying that their ethics are good. Nobody would say that their ethics are bad, but what very few companies do and what very few leaders do is sit down and think, what actions demonstrate that? Because I think that what people know us by is by our behavior patterns and our actions. So I think about being a leader in my own business and being a leader in a community. I'm a challenger. And I know you know this, Mike, but I took that Enneagram test a long time ago. I've taken it a few times. And every time it comes back with your number 8 is your number one thing, which is you challenge people, which I know drives people crazy at times, but it also pushes them beyond their comfort zone. And for me, some of the people that were the most influential in my life were really hard on me. So there's a different kind of being really hard on you from a behavioral standpoint than my first example of just looking for everything that I did wrong and why they could be annoyed with me.
Mhm.
The people that were hard on me that also believed in my potential, those are the ones I'm like, man, I'd have followed them anyway. I'd jump off a cliff with them and go, hey, how do you think we ought to land?
Yeah.
Figure it out on the way down. And I had a guy that I worked for at a consulting firm right before I went into business, that I know he probably had his own problems in life, but I just knew him at work. And at work, Richard, this guy that I worked for, was fantastic. And he would go, he's the one that had me hire you originally, Mike, to build a website.
I know Richard well.
Yeah. But he just goes, hey, I want to create something amazing. What is the best version of HR consulting that you think we could do? And he would just challenge you with, what is the best version? You would start looking at that best version of self and that best version of the organization, and you would find that your actions would significantly exceed anything that you would have done otherwise. And that, to me, that challenger aspect of being a great leader is, I see more potential in you than you've currently seen in yourself. And it's painful at times to my employees, I'm sure, when I go, I know you can do this. And I start going, hey, Megan is fantastic at this. You should hire her to do this. And then she's like, I've not done that much of that. I'm like, we can take a class, and I'll send her to take classes and learn it, because everything I know how to do, I had to learn at some point from someone or some book. So I think that challenger aspect is one of the things that I admire tremendously, as far as getting people to see more of their own potential. And that's what I want in a great leader. So let's jump to Megan. What's something that you want in a great leader, or that you've experienced in a great leader?
For me, I think consistency and follow through are the two biggest things that I really love in a great leader, because I want to know what to expect. And that kind of goes back to my personality. If you listened to our podcast last week with the PPI, it says that I like consistency and stability, and I like processes. So consistency in leadership, knowing what to expect, and being able to take them at their word is a huge thing for me. If they say that they're going to do something, I expect them to do it. And if they don't do that thing, then, I start to lose trust on that, whether it's, something as a reward or a punishment. If you tell me I fall short of my goals, then you're going to do something, and then I fall short and you don't do what you said you were going to do, then, now this wouldn't be me personally, but a lot of the time people will start slacking off because they know that they can get away with it. So as a leader, you just have to stay true to what you say that you're going to do, and you have to show up and apply that to all of your people. You can't pick and choose who you're going to reward or punish. It has to be for the entire team.
So for you, it's consistency, follow through, being able to know what to expect. How about you, Mike? What do you look for in a great leader, or what have you experienced?
High character. And that's what I look for in a leader that I want to follow. I look for someone of high character. Nobody's going to get it right 100% of the time, and I'm okay with that. Mostly if you know that I'm not going to get it right 100% of the time. But I look for a leader who understands that your character will define you. I remember reading a book. It was a compilation of Ronald Reagan's personal diaries. And he wrote, a journal entry every single day that he was in office, except for the day that he got shot. And then he went back and did a retro entry. But it was interesting. After he got shot, he was in his hospital room recovering, and he spilled something on the floor. And he went to the bathroom, grabbed a towel, and started wiping it up. And somebody came in and said, "Mr. President, we've got people to do that. He's like, but it's my mess." And just the way that he articulated that, like, that's a leader of high character, right? I don't need somebody else to take care of these things for me. It's my mess. I'm going to handle it, and that's somebody that I can get behind.
So, like, Daniel Goleman talked about 6 different kinds of leadership style. Part of what I would see is, like, I try to correlate this to the research that's out there. And Goleman wrote in Emotional Intelligence 2.0 and a whole bunch of other stuff. The pace setting leader, like you're talking about with Ronald Reagan, sets the standards, drives for success, leads by example. Then you've got the person that is focusing on building connection. That's called the affiliative leader. And I think, Megan, that's a lot of what you talked about, is they want the relationship, they want the performance, they focus on the harmony, they try to make sure that they're doing what the other person is needing them to do. The ones that I always worked well for were the visionary leaders or the pace setters. I always wanted the pace setter, but I typically had a visionary. So a visionary said that purpose drives people. You got to have a purpose. Otherwise, there's nothing that's going to happen. You correlate this to another model. This goes back to Hershey and Blanchard. I don't know if you ever read Situational Leadership, Mike, but it was a good book, and it talked about 4 different styles. You have the directing style, which I don't think any of us want, but some people do. And that's kind of assume that the person doesn't know what they're doing, but you assume they're enthusiastic about it. So you have to direct all their actions because they're really excited, but not very focused. Then you've got the coaching style. And I think this one can be good sometimes for each one of us. If we're learning a new skill, if we're trying to develop something, we need somebody that believes in us and pushes us. The one that I saw that, Megan, that you said you would like would be more on the supporting, which is the person's very capable, but they need the backup. They need encouragement. They need confidence. They need communication. And then for me, delegating is the one that I typically prefer in a leader, which is high competence, high commitment. So they assume I know what I'm doing. They give me a target and they get the heck out of my way. They don't really follow up with me. I will call them if I need them. What I have discovered, though, and this is part of what Hershey and Blanchard described, what I have discovered is that I'm going to take a pause here. It says Mike's recording failed. I don't know what that means. Dang it.
I think he's frozen.
There you go. You're on there twice now.
I got an Amber Alert and it completely kicked me out of the recording.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so I'm going to get rid of. That's me. I think this is you.
You'll have to take this one out in post.
Yeah, we'll take this one out in post. All right, so I think we're back on track.
Yeah, still recording, so yep.
Yep. So what I was going to say, though, is that when you think about these 4 styles, directing, coaching, supporting, delegating, what I've learned is I have to adapt to what they need. And that was the whole point of situational leadership, is that the right leadership style isn't always your preferred style. It's quite often the opposite of what you would want, but exactly what the other person would want. And learning to be adaptive as a leader is critical. And you go back a couple of generations, I really feel like the vast majority of people really, they liked what they were like. And so they assumed that everybody should just adapt to them. And I don't think that works.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, right? The situational leadership, because the skill, when you think about leadership today, 2026 and beyond, right? Adaptive fluency is really what's necessary for leaders. The situations are no longer static. They're no longer, kind of cut and dried. Everything is changing. Everything is converging. Like, you have to understand and be divining the tea leaves, so to speak, every single day, every single moment of every single day, because it's going to change. And it's not about just one leadership style. Jody, to your point, it used to be like, I'm a dictator, I'm a delegator, I'm an authoritarian, I'm a whatever. It's like, no, you've got to play the full gamut every single day, because the situations are going to come up and change. I do want to circle back to something you were saying earlier. You were talking about 2 ends of the spectrum, one being transformational, one being transactional. I think the name of that spectrum is relational, right? It comes back to the relationship that you have, or the relationship that you are trying to create, because a transactional leader is creating a type of relationship with the people that are following. A transformational leader is creating a relationship, and understanding what that dynamic looks like is what how should I say it? I'm stumbling. That's what's going to define the relationship, and that's what's going to define your actions of how you want to show up every single day.
Very good point. Thoughts, Megan?
Yeah, And I think that, when you were talking about how leadership needs to be so individualized, that kind of goes back to learning styles too, because not everybody learns the same way, which means that they don't communicate the same way or perform in the same way. It doesn't make them any less than anyone else. It just means that they pursue things differently. So you have to really work with your people and listen to understand them and connect with them as the leader. So pay attention to the nonverbal cues, pay attention to the body posture or the whispers that you see in the team meetings, who's taking notes, and that sort of thing. And if you do see somebody that's taking notes, that might be somebody who really prefers written communication. So send them an email after a meeting, after you talk about something, follow up with them, and really just ask them too. Like if you're not sure, just have a conversation with them. What can I do to show up as a leader for you so that you can be the most successful?
I think that's a good point. And like you think throughout history, we've had some really, really great leaders. We've also had some really horrifically bad leaders. I mean, you could talk about people like Joseph Stalin, who is very much an autocrat, very transactional, very coercive, what you would call extreme theory X in his style: high control, fear based leadership, maintain power, destroy the people around him that don't fall into line. In my book, Leadership Evo, I would call that the troglodyte, that missing link that just clears desk and stuff. Enron is probably another example. If you look at their executive leadership, is very transactional and very pace setting at an extreme level. And what you find is when you're so driven to accomplish, specifically so driven to accomplish financials, then the research shows that you have a tendency as an organization, a very strong one, to violate ethical standards in order to get a little bit more money. They're squeezing a little bit harder out there. But then, the good ones, like we talked about with Abraham Lincoln and Martin Luther
I
King
was thinking Saddam Hussein. He ranks up there among the bad ones.
he does rank up there among the bad ones. Like, I think none of the ones that were bad ones, though, I doubt that they looked at themselves and thought, wow, I am such a bad guy, or I'm such a bad person. They just thought, I don't think they understand how important my vision is here. And they were so singular focused, which in business, sometimes you celebrate those people that have that singular focus and that extreme drive, but you've got to temper that with ethics and values,
Yeah.
or you get yourself into trouble.
Well, I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? If you don't, as a leader, if you don't acknowledge the blind spots that you have, your likelihood to end up as a bad leader increases immensely, right? So you have to have that high character. You have to have that secure foundation of who you are. You have to have the vulnerability, because the minute you stop acknowledging that you have blind spots, that you could become that bad leader, is the minute you become that bad leader.
Very
Yeah,
true.
and I think something to point out too is that there are levels of leadership within your organizations. You can have really great leaders while also having some pretty bad leaders. And the bad ones can really mess up the experience for everyone else, despite having good leaders in your organization, which is why I think it's so important to develop all of your leaders at all levels, whether it's your mid-level managers or your top executives. Everybody has to be on board. They need to understand the mission, vision, and values of the organization. And you need to teach them how to approach your people because, I go back to my first job that I ever had, and I was 16, um, and I had some amazing managers at this place. But my boss, the main boss that I had, I could not stand her. She was horrible to everybody. She was so mean. And I wanted to quit anytime I had to work with her. But if I was working with any of the other managers, I loved my job. I had so much fun there. I wanted to show up.
Yeah.
And so you have to pay attention to all of your leaders, not just a couple of them.
So Jody, I want to take a moment and ask you a question, because you and Megan do this, right? One of your programs that you deliver is called Supervisor 101. A lot of people go into a supervisor position, or they get hired into a supervisor position without having any training whatsoever on how to lead people. Help for the audience, just help. What's kind of like, what's the baseline that you establish for those supervisors coming in through your course? Because I think that is the entryway into what we're talking about right here.
When I try to explain to people, you would never go to an accountant and say, hey, look, have you ever done accounting before? And they go, no. They go, great. We're going to put you in charge of our accounting, so don't make mistakes. So we're asking people to do a skill set. And there's 4 basic skills that a supervisor has to have. Skill number 1, how do you leverage talent, which is the way that you hire, the way that you onboard, and the basics of retention, why people will stay with you, why they will leave. Then you have to make sure that you develop your own emotional intelligence and the emotional intelligence of others. Can you read people? Can you adapt your communication style? Go back to what we're talking about in relationships so that you keep people. The third skill that they have to have is they have to know how to build an effective team. How do they get people to go in the same direction, come together as a team and form, figure out how to have positive conflict without running away, figure out how to play to people's strengths, and then figure out how to reach top performance. And then the final is, how do you create positive accountability? And I want to tell just a quick story on this. We just recently did a sold out event again on Supervisor 101 here in Amarillo. Had a guy
They're always sold out.
No, thank you. We worked very hard on that. This guy came up to me, he goes, I tell you what I can get from this. As long as people just do what they're told, everything's fine. I go, really? That's what you got from 3/4 of the way through this event after finishing emotional intelligence and building the team? He goes, wasn't that what they're supposed to do? I go, everybody is supposed to perform, but you can't mandate it. The whole point is, it isn't about making people do what they're supposed to do. It's about creating a culture and an atmosphere that warrants the best of who they are. Their discretionary effort triples their outcomes. Performance is rooted in mastering these 4 skills. That's the problem, though, is who had a lesson on how to place an ad, how to do an interview, how to make sure you got the right person, how to be emotionally intelligent. They don't do that before they put them in charge. And we've been making fun of that since 1968. I don't mean us personally, but Lawrence J. Peter, the computer principle, said that people are systematically promoted beyond their level of competence. So whatever you're good at, he went on to explain, we'll take you out of that and put you in something that you have no idea how to do.
Yeah. We had a guy, this isn't a leadership, but it underscores the point. There's a gentleman who, well, I guess it does kind of go to leadership, but I worked for the newspaper in Abilene, Texas for a while. There's a gentleman there by the name of Charlie, had been there for 33 years, had been doing the exact same job for 33 years. And it was not rocket science. It was a mechanical job. It was a very simple, he had like three workstations that he had to do for 33 years. When the newspaper got sold to a new publisher, they pulled him into the office and said, we can't pay somebody what we're paying you for the job that you're doing. So starting Monday, you're a supervisor. Now in 33 years, Charlie has never expressed a single desire to be a supervisor of anything. And on Monday, they made him a supervisor, and 3 months later, they fired him for being an ineffective supervisor. And I'm sure there was some political tactics in there perhaps, but I mean, why would you promote this gentleman to be a supervisor when he, 1, didn't express it, but 2, has no capacity to do that? And you're systematically promoted into that thing that you can't do.
It doesn't make any sense. Megan, your thoughts?
I think that's a great point too, because not everyone wants to be a leader, and that's perfectly okay, because we need followers, and
we need professional followers.
Exactly. Yes. People who can be directed and who still show up and do the work, and their performance speaks for itself in their position. But it doesn't come naturally to everybody. You can train people up to become leaders. But again, there are going to be some people who just don't fit within that leadership position. And that's not a bad reflection of them. It's just the way that it is.
No, we need people at every level, and I want skilled people at every level. To Mike's point, we want professionals at every level. I don't think you can be a great leader until you know how to follow. So I do think all of that plays into it. But I think from a style standpoint, the hardest lesson a leader learns, it's three prong. Prong number one, leadership is a skill set. It's not you're naturally a leader or not. Even those that we call natural leaders, they're the ones that were given a lot of leadership opportunities growing up and developed the skill set, usually by modeling other great leaders. So, number one, it is a skill set. Second prong on this and this uh, desire to be a great leader is it takes practice. There's no way to like read a book and be a great leader or go to one class and be a great leader. It is a lifelong journey to be a great leader. And no matter how many books I've read, every leadership book that I read, I'm like, I really wish I would have known that before.
Yes.
And then the third prong is that great leaders have to be values driven. They are humble, they are visionaries, they are compassionate about other people, they adapt to other people. They have these sets of values that drive who they are and really define them. And if we look at it from that perspective, like our tagline is become the leader you would follow. And this is the Become the Leader podcast. So you look at that and it's not just like, oh, I'll show up, do a couple things, and then I'm the leader. And I think, unfortunately, that is the mystique that the world has put out there, is that people are natural born leaders and we make them the president or we make them the, whatever of the organization. And then everything in the world is so much better. And like my uncle, who was a banker, said, the key to success is don't make bad choices. And I sat there for a minute. I go, I'm 11, by the way, when he's telling me this. And I go, okay, well, how do you not make bad choices? He goes, well, if you do it like me, basically you make a whole bunch of bad choices, but then you learn from them and you don't make any more bad choices after that. So that's
Yeah.
wisdom, is learning from your mistake.
And that reminds me of the quote by John F. Kennedy, which is leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. So you are continuously developing yourself and learning from your people, from your mistakes, learning from success, and you invest that back into yourself so that you can become better.
Yeah, they are
Uh,
indispensable.
Jody, you may be familiar with the name. I believe it's Dr. Lewin, Lewin. Yeah. So he's the one that actually kind of, I don't know if he coined the term, but he certainly brought a lot, kind of shone a bright spotlight on this thing called leadership style. Because at the time, in the 30s and the 40s, the sentiment was you're either born a great leader or you're not. And he was really the one that kind of mapped out, these different traits and qualities, and that you could become a great leader. And you were talking about you don't just learn it by a book. Steph Curry did not read a book about how to shoot 3-point basketball. He didn't read a book to do it. It was
Feel like
practice
there's more
about
to
that,
it.
right?
Yeah.
Right. If he did read it, there was a lot more to it. But the point being is, you have to go out and you have to practice it. Getting the knowledge is great, but knowledge without application is just data, right? So you got to be able to apply it and learn and grow from it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So I want to kind of bring it all together with this. Lewin, which I'm glad you brought him up, that's autocratic, democratic, laissez-faire. I feel like McGregor kind of took his stuff to create the Theory X, Theory Y management motivation theory, where he described people respond to somewhere on that continuum of autocratic, Theory X, democratic, in between the two, and laissez-faire, Theory Y, hands off, leave me alone, let me do my thing. And you can blend all of these things together. So whether you're talking about Goldman's 6 styles of leadership, or transformational versus transactional, or Hersey and Blanchard's situational leadership, all of those come back to the same basic thing. Unless you get to know your people and perfect your craft, you're not going to be a great leader. And the ones that are arrogant enough to think that they know everything and don't need any more development are the ones that eventually get knocked off their throne. And that's a really important lesson for people to grasp, is none of us knows it all. Not me, not you two, not anybody I've met. And I've met some really smart people, but the smartest of the smartest people are the ones that go, I need to learn some more. And they just keep studying. So that's my final thought. Megan, you have a final thought you want to share?
Yes, so I just wanted to say, as you're stepping into a leadership position, there will be some growing pains, but don't let that deter you. keep pushing forward, keep learning, keep interacting with people and collaborating for everyone's success because you are capable and you can reach that potential. You have to see it in yourself and then you have to see it in other people as well.
And just to piggyback on that, every leader starts at zero. There is no one that comes in and starts at the top. Everybody starts at zero, and everybody, even the greatest leaders, have moments that scare the bejesus out of them. So just keep pushing forward, keep learning, keep growing, keep practicing.
All right. Well, I want to thank you guys for joining us for this episode of the Become the Leader podcast, talking about leadership styles and correlating actions, values, and styles together. I'm Jody Holland.
I'm Mike Grigsby.
It's Slaughter.
And we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for joining Become the Leader. Keep growing forward and become the leader you would follow.